The night is very dark, there are no stars and no moon. The wind howled, like a roaring beast hunting its prey. In the cave at the end of the forest, an ice coffin is left alone, and the stunning beauty in the ice coffin sleeps peacefully, unaffected by the outside world. One night passed, the wind was off and the sky was bright, and there was something different in the cave. Suddenly, the beauty suddenly opened her eyes, the waves of her eyes flowed in her beautiful eyes, and a gleam of light disappeared in no time. At this moment, a cat jumped onto the ice coffin. Meow! In the next second, the ice coffin was torn apart and exploded, and the cave suddenly became dusty. After a long time, the dust dispersed, and a stunning beauty stood where the ice coffin was originally placed. The beauty's eyebrows are like distant mountains without a trace, and her lips are vermilion without a touch of sand. Hands are like catkins, skin is like fat, clever smiles, beautiful eyes look forward to. Ha! Just relying on this ice coffin to seal my Shen Yan? It's just a wishful thinking. Shen Yan looked at the ice coffin that had fallen into pieces, and a flash of hatred flashed through his eyes. She married her son Feng Ming when she was 15 years old, and had 6 children in 10 years. She thought he would fulfill his promise of one couple for one generation, but she didn't want him to have fornication with other women, who happened to be her boudoir Chinese friends. Shen Yan wanted to endure it, but the other party made repeated provocations, she couldn't bear it, and had a fight with the woman. Unexpectedly, that woman was so sinister that she stunned herself with a hidden weapon. She didn't know what happened later, only that at the last moment when she was successfully sealed, she suddenly woke up and saw that she was sealed by Ming Ming. And this ice coffin is what sealed her. Thinking of this, the hatred in Shen Yan's heart is even greater. What irony is that the person next to the pillow turned out to be the murderer of himself. She took a deep breath and suppressed the violence factor in her heart. Little bit, how are your little masters? The cat seemed to understand her and nodded at her. Shen Yan's lips twitched. Very well, let's go and take away the little masters. For Feng Ming, the 6 children were his Ni Lin. As long as she took the children away, he would not be able to live with that woman properly. As he thought about it, Shen Yan was in a good mood. Little by little, I saw Shen Yan walking out, chasing after her, blocking her in front of her and gesticulating something. Shen Yan thought he was worried about himself, so he soothed, "Don't worry, I won't be planted on the same person a second time." A little bit anxiously spinning around in place, the hair all over her body was messed up. Shen Yan looked at it amusedly, "I'm really fine, let's go. It's been a long time since I saw the little masters. They know I must be very happy when I wake up." Shen Yan stepped past a little bit and walked out of the cave slowly. Behind him, he scratched his head irritably, and followed in despair. It's not that it doesn't want to remind the owner, but that the owner has been lying down for 3,000 years and has forgotten how to communicate with it. At this time, Feng Jing, who was sitting in the president's office, suddenly looked up from the document, his face changed drastically. As soon as the secretary walked in with the file, he saw the president who was imminent in danger strode out, and the steps under his feet were a little messy. "President, you. All afternoon trips have been cancelled." The secretary was shocked, but in the afternoon there was a project worth hundreds of millions of dollars for him to come to talk in person. He hurriedly chased out, "Where is Feng Jing's shadow?" Shen Yan stood halfway up the mountain, staring at the tall buildings rising from the bottom of the mountain for a long time. "Little bit, are we still in Qingluan country?" Little by little, covering his eyes, without answering. Shen Yan took a breath. There is such a tall building under the world, and there are not 2 places in one place. What is this place? Just thinking about it, there was a sneerful voice behind him. "This barren mountain has such a stunning back. Brother, I guess she must be ugly. I'm just the opposite of what you think. I bet she must be a pretty girl, look at this pretty waist, look at this skin. In this way, let's bet, whoever guesses right will go first." You gamble. Even if you don't look good, but you cover your face, this figure is enough to make people fascinated. Shen Yan heard their conversation, her eyebrows wrung fiercely. Did you meet Deng's disciple? The sound of footsteps was getting closer, and Shen Yan turned around, and saw two men in strange costumes staring at her behind him. The two men froze the moment they saw her, and their faces were full of ecstasy. Brother! We are blessed! Yes, yes, I didn't expect to meet the best in this kind of place. The man said, looking at Shen Yan with a squint, with a wretched smile, Little sister, are you lost? Would your brother take you down the mountain? Shen Yan heard the words and said unabashedly disgusted, Stay away from me, otherwise I will be welcome. Ha 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 ha, did you hear my brother? He told you to stay away, so let me go first. When the words fell, the man strode forward. Seeing that his hand was about to touch Shen Yan's face, something suddenly jumped up, and then, the man's screams resounded across the mountain. The man behind him who was about to step forward was so scared that he trembled. You, what kind of monster is your cat? He had never seen a cat that big, a little bigger than a fox. Just now it jumped up, and he heard the sound of broken bones. The cat, no, the speed of the monster was so fast that he only had time to see an afterimage. Shen Yan indifferently glanced at the man lying on the ground because of pain, without a trace of temperature in his voice. If you hadn't thought about it, you wouldn't hurt you a little bit like this, it's your own responsibility. The man was shaking all over. He couldn't imagine that there was such a monster beside this pure and beautiful little sister. It is no wonder that she dared to come to the wilderness alone in ancient costumes. Seeing that the man hadn't left yet, Shen Yan's face gradually became colder. If you don't get out yet, do you want to break your hand a little bit? No. No. I'm going now, now. The man ran away. Wait, take him away too. The man turned back hard, dragging the man on the ground to run desperately, as if there was a scourge chasing them behind him. Only then did Shen Yan look a little bit. I don't know where it is, so don't take it lightly next time, so as not to expose yourself. Diane immediately stood by her side obediently, and accompanied her to continue to look at the tall buildings. At the foot of the mountain, a black Maybach parked there, and a tall man who got down from the car was Feng Jing from the company. Seeing that he was standing on the side of the road without moving, the driver couldn't help but go forward and ask, President, what are we doing here? Pick up! Pick up! The driver swept around and was about to say where there was a shadow, when he heard curses coming from behind the bushes not far away. This stinky lady, if I meet her next time, she will definitely make her die worse. Come on, you don't have a long memory if you break a hand. Don't even talk about the next time, just to meet you several times, you are not the opponent of the cat next to her. Then slaughter her cat first. There was a loud noise, and the man who had just spoken was violently torn out. When he reacted, he had been thrown onto the road. The piercing pain made his face pale. However, what happened next made him want to faint even more. The brightly polished high-end customized leather shoes stepped on his wrist without warning, and a man's cold voice came from above his head, You just said, who did you meet? Turn off your fart, ah 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 ah. Woman. It's a woman. Feng Jing relaxed, and asked, What kind of woman? The man didn't dare to make a second at this moment, and described Shen Yan's appearance again, and how the cat brutally broke his hand. At last he said, Little brother, I think you are a talented person. It's best not to provoke that woman. She is not a good stubborn, and you will not be her opponent. Feng Jing turned a deaf ear to his ears, and instead told the driver, Call the police and say that someone is playing a hooligan here. The driver was shocked as early as the moment Feng Jing threw the person out of the bushes. After hearing Feng Jing's words, he quickly regained consciousness and took out his mobile phone to make a call. Feng Jing looked at the uninjured man behind the bushes, Do you remember where you met the woman just now? Remember, remember. Very well, you take me over. Yes, yes. On the mountainside, Shen Yan walked down the highway. After thinking for a long time, she realized that she had no impression of this place. But what she can be sure of is that this is definitely not Qingluan country. Little bit, where are we now? Meow, I don't know when I can return to Qingluan country. Meow, hey, I suddenly miss those stinky boys, and I don't know them. Meow meow meow. When Shen Yan heard the screaming, something was wrong, and when he was about to ask, he rushed out. She twisted her eyebrows slightly. Could it be that those two people were back again? She walked in the direction of Little Little, and soon, she saw Little Little wagging her tail and walking back. Behind it, a man followed. When she saw the man's appearance clearly, her heart shuddered, and her body tightened instantly. This man looks too much like a dog's son. Seeing her little by little, Pai Diana ran in front of her, wagging his tail as if asking for praise. Shen Yan suddenly sneered, "When did you learn to betray the Lord?" A little bit stiffened his body, and his tail didn't move. It looked at Shen Yan with grievances in its eyes. Shen Yan snorted coldly, "You were given to me by him a long time ago. If you betray the master, there will only be one end, you." "Mother, it's me, Jinger." The man interrupted her. Shen Yan was shocked and looked at the man in front of him incredulously. Soon she shook her head, "Impossible, my Jinger is only 9 years old, you can't be him." Feng Jingming was only 9 years old when she was sealed. How could it be possible that she would have grown into her 20s as soon as she woke up? Seeing that she didn't believe what she said, Feng Jing continued, "Mother, it's really me. You have been sealed for too long, and we've all grown up." After a pause, he said, "We are now in the world 3,000 years later, and our abilities are all limited, otherwise I will be here before you wake up." There is telepathy between him and Shen Yan, and they don't know if it is because they are not in Qingluan country, or because Shen Yan has been asleep for too long, they can't use telepathy. Shen Yan was unmoved. "Say, were you sent by the dog to confuse me? Tell him, let him not bother with this, and ask me to forgive him unless he dies." When Feng Jing saw this, he poured her a glass of water, then took out the materials he had prepared, and was about to speak, he heard Shen Yan ask, "Jinger, you live in such a big house. Where are your brothers?" Feng Jing paused, his eyes flickered, "Something happened not long ago, so I can't contact them for the time being." "What happened?" Shen Yan asked nervously. "It's not a big deal, don't worry, I will get them all back." Shen Yan was relieved now. Her Jinger has been a reassuring child since she was a child, and there is nothing impossible to do what he promised. "What is this?" Shen Yan noticed what was in Feng Jing's hand. Feng Jing opened the file bag and took out the files in it to her. "Mother, this world is different from the Qingluan country. If you want to stay here, you need a legal identity. This is your new identity." Shen Yan took a look and frowned, "Are you going to let me pretend to be the eldest lady of the Shen family? Ms. Shen Jia died of poisoning 20 years ago. The key is that not only did she look exactly like you, but she was 20 years old when she died, and it looks no different from you now. This is the most convenient identity." At this moment, Shen Yan not only twisted his brows into a Chuan character, but his expression also became unhappy. "How can my dignified concubine do this kind of imposture? Not to mention that person has passed away. Mother, this is just an external identity. If you don't want to deal with the people of the Shen family, you don't let them know that you exist. Moreover, Miss Shen Jia is just missing out." Shen Yan squeezed his eyebrows, and asked with a headache, "Is it necessary to do this?" Feng Jing didn't speak. Shen Yan waved his hand, "I will discuss this matter tomorrow, and I will go back to the room first." Feng Jing heard that she quickly took her back to the room to rest. After dinner in the evening, Feng Jing turned on the TV and explained to Shen Yan, leaving her to watch TV on the sofa, while she went to the study. Shen Yan watched it with gusto while studying this thing called TV. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared on the screen. Shen Yan's pupil shrank. He picked up the glass on the table and smashed it on the TV. Clang! The picture on the TV did not change, and the glass fell to pieces on the ground. Feng Jing rushed over after hearing the sound, saw the broken glass, and looked at Shen Yan nervously. "Mother, are you okay?" Shen Yan stared at the TV screen, as if about to burst into flames. "That bitch, she actually dared to appear in front of me. I'm going to smash her bones into ashes." Feng Jing followed her gaze and looked over. The next second, he couldn't laugh or cry. "This is just a picture, not a real person." After a pause, he seemed to understand something, and said helplessly, "You can't hurt her half a point like this. This is just a screen, she's not in it." Shen Yan was furious. "Why can't I see her here?" Feng Jing took a look and made sure that Zhang Ma hadn't heard anything here, so she explained it to her. "This is called a TV series. The scene you just saw was filmed and then played on TV. The person you saw is the person acting." "Acting? Where shall I find her then?" Feng Jing knew about Shen Yan's grievances with that woman, but he didn't want his mother to find her before his father came back, so he said, "Mother, I know you want to kill her, but the world now is different from before. You can't solve things by fighting and killing. You have to suppress the other party by your ability. For example, if she is acting, you want to suppress her by your own try hard to grab her resources and leave her with no play to act." "Okay. You arrange for me, I want to grab her resources." Feng Jing got a headache. This is not about grabbing and grabbing. First of all, you have to become an actor. "That's not easy. I will become an actor." She came from the royal family, and intrigue happens every day. She has long been used to pretending to be herself and playing a role that others like. How difficult is acting for her? However, Feng Jing was a little embarrassed. "But mother, you don't have the identity to see people." Shen Yan gritted his teeth. "Isn't the identity of Miss Shen's okay?" Feng Jing pressed the curvature of the corners of his lips. "Okay, mother said it would do." The next morning, Feng Jing went downstairs and saw that Shen Yan was already sitting at the table for breakfast. He paused, and looked at her in surprise. Today, she didn't wear the cumbersome costumes of Qingluan country, and her long hair was simply pulled up. A goose yellow dress made her look like an innocent girl. Feng Jing suddenly regretted asking her to prepare these clothes for her. If he was seen by his father, he might be fined. How to punish him? Just thinking about it, Shen Yan discovered his existence. "What do you dare to do? Come over for breakfast." The corners of Feng Jing's lips twitched slightly, and strode over. "Mother, how was your rest last night?" "Well, it's okay. Although the bed here is not as good as her sandalwood bed, it feels comfortable to sleep." "That's good." The two did not speak any more, and finished their breakfast quietly. Shen Yan wiped the corners of his mouth gracefully, and said to Feng Jing, "Jinger, did you arrange the things you mentioned to me last night?" Feng Jing nodded. "There is an entertainment company under the Winterthur multinational group. Go there, and I can know if there is anything in time." "Good. As long as she can be an actor earlier and grab the woman's resources earlier, she doesn't care about the details. God knows she can't wait to find that woman now, and then the white knife goes in and the red knife goes out." Feng Jing glanced at the time and said, "I have an important meeting in the morning. Later I will ask the driver to take you there, and someone will take you over there." He took out the mobile phone that was prepared by the person. "This is a mobile phone, this is the communication tool here, I will teach you." Shen Yan grabbed the phone and walked out. "Don't grind, let's go." Feng Jing looked at Wukong's hand and shook his head helplessly. The mother is still as impatient as she remembered, and it is easy to suffer in this world. But there are a few of them, and they won't let her be bullied. World Entertainment, downstairs. After the driver delivered Shen Yan, he made a call according to Feng Jing's instructions. Knowing that the other party would have to wait a few minutes to come, the driver waited with Shen Yan in the car. Unexpectedly, Shen Yan pushed the door and got out of the car. "You can go back now." "This master ordered, you must let Ji Biu pick you up before leaving." "No, I'll go find him." The driver thinks about it, too. This is all at the door of his company. Is it possible that what else would go wrong? So he left with confidence. Here, Shen Yan walked into the lobby, first looked at the surrounding environment, and after confirming that it was the same as Feng Jing had described to her, she walked to the place where a girl was. Feng Jing said that that place is called the front desk, a place dedicated to receiving guests. "I'm looking for Ji Biu," she said. The girl gave her a glance and asked, "Do you have an appointment with Manager Ji?" "Manager Ji? What is Manager Ji?" Shen Yan repeated, "I'm looking for Ji Biu." After a pause, she said, "Feng Jing asked me to find him." This girl is an intern who just came to the company and didn't know that Feng Jing was her boss. After hearing Shen Yan's words, the girl couldn't help showing a hint of sarcasm. "Miss, if you are looking for Manager Ji, please make an appointment with him. Manager Ji is very busy every day." Shen Yan was startled. After a long while, she said blankly, "There are also people who know everything in this world." "But Feng Jing said that there is no emperor in this world?" The girl was a little impatient. Seeing that she was more prettier than herself, she heard some inexplicable things and called the security guard directly. "In the security room, there is a woman at the front desk making trouble, please come and send her out." Although Shen Yan didn't know what the security guard she was talking about, she obviously didn't want to talk to herself anymore, and she understood it a little bit. Her face was cold. "That's how you receive guests." The girl called the security guard and didn't want to talk to her anymore. After hearing her say this, her temper also came up. "Who are you? The guests I want to receive are not like you without an appointment. If everyone comes to me and tells me that they can meet everyone, the grassroots can't be busy." I said, "Feng Jing asked him to pick me up. We have an appointment." The girl glanced at her disdainfully. "Sorry, I don't know someone named Feng Jing. If you don't leave, the security will come and drive you out." The girl finished speaking and looked towards the door. Shen Yan followed her gaze, and saw several men in the same clothes and hats rushing in her direction with a black stick. That posture really seemed to come to drive her out. Shen Yan narrowed his eyes, and his whole body exuded coldness. "You know, the last person who dared to be disrespectful to her was already taken care of by the dog. Seriously, she hasn't personally cleaned up people in a long time." As he thought about it, Shen Yan felt a little itchy in his hands. She moved her joints without a trace, and found a suitable angle to face them. Seeing those people approaching her, an angry voice came, "Stop it all! Manager Ji!" The girl looked forward in surprise. Ji Biu ignored her and walked quickly to the security guard, pulling his face. "Who told you to do it on her?" The moment the security heard his voice, he withdrew the stick that was reaching for Shen Yan. The headed security guard said, "It was the front desk who called and said that someone was making trouble and asked us to come over and drive people." Ji Biu only felt that her temples were jumping up and down. She is a woman who has no power to bind a chicken. Does she need to let you big men go together? Before the security had spoken, the girl rushed to say, "Manager Ji, it's this lady who is making trouble for no reason. She didn't make an appointment, but insisted on seeing the top of our company." Ji Biu looked at her. "She didn't say who made her come here." "Yes, but she said that a person named Feng Jing asked her to come to you. I don't recognize." "You don't know who Feng Jing is?" Ji Biu raised the tone without waiting for her to finish. The girl didn't realize that there was something wrong with Ji Biu's emotions. She shook her head. "I don't know, but I don't think there is a very important person, so." Ji Biu took a deep breath, endured it, did not hold it back, and shouted at her, Ji Bu, are all his Feng Jing's subordinates. Who do you think he is? The girl was completely stunned. Ji Bu didn't look at her, and called the assistant to come over, let him lead the front desk to the financial department to settle the salary and let her go. Who on earth recruited such a person with no vision? He didn't even know what his CEO was called. After dealing with the security matters, Ji Bu curbed his anger and looked at Shen Yan with a smile. Miss Shen, our president has already greeted me, you come with me. Shen Yan looked at the direction the security guard was leaving and didn't know what he was thinking. He took his gaze back until someone called her, and glanced at his eagerly moving hands, a little regretful. I thought I could have a good fight. Director office. Ji Bu made a cup of tea and put it in front of Shen Yan, and then sat down opposite her. I don't know which type of TV series Miss Shen wants to make. The above only said that she would arrange filming for her, and nothing else. He couldn't help wondering, could the innocent girl in front of him really be the head of his family? If this is the case, then he will be more concerned. Which type? Shen Yan recalled the TV series she watched last night, and couldn't think of how to describe it for a while. Suddenly her head flashed, and she said, the one that dresses differently from yours. Ji Bu, that's a costume drama. He walked to the desk and flipped through it, digging out 2 scripts, and handing them to Shen Yan. You pick one. Shen Yan took it without turning over. I want to shoot the same one with Su Hui Man. Ji Bu took a deep breath. Su Hui Man. That's a big name. Looking at Shen Yan, she is inexperienced. If she plays the same play with Su Hui Man, she can only be a supporting role, but she is also a Feng Jing person. Ji Bu has a headache. Shen Yan didn't know what she was thinking. She curled her eyebrows and asked him, why, Jing'er didn't tell you that I wanted to be an actor because of Su Hui Man. Jing'er? Ji Bu no longer doubted the relationship between Shen Yan and Feng Jing. There were not many people who dared to call Feng Jing's name directly. It was the first time he saw anyone who dared to call Jing'er. This woman has a very close relationship with Feng Jing, but he can't deal with it casually. So he straightened his face and said, it's my negligence. Miss Shen, we don't have any scenes with Su Hui Man in our hands. Why don't you choose other scripts to shoot? When news of cooperation with her, I will definitely be the first. Time to let you know. Shen Yan glanced at him lightly, are you the person in charge here? You can't even invite Su Hui Man, I think your ability is not as good as my Jing'er's. Ji Bu was ashamed. If he is better than Feng Jing, he doesn't need to work under his hands. But he dare not say this, unless he doesn't want to get confused. After thinking about it, he said, Miss Shen, you probably don't know that Su Hui Man has been filming abroad for the past 2 years, and she didn't accept any domestic scripts. It's not that our company is not good enough. When Shen Yan heard it, her delicate face suddenly pulled down. Damn Su Hui Man, how could he still be able to toss? It's not enough to make a good filming in your own country. If you go to another country to make a film, is it because you don't know which country you are from? She asked, which country is she filming in? Ji Bu. Although he knew it, he didn't dare to say it. He had no doubt that as long as he said where Su Hui Man was, she would chase him right away. He wiped his cold sweat and said, we still need to confirm this, because she won't be fixed in a country for filming. Shen Yan snorted coldly in his heart. After so many years, Su Hui Man is still restless, not enough to seduce the dog, and running around, maybe he wants to seduce more people. Seeing that Ji Bu didn't seem to be lying, she didn't make it difficult for him. If you have news, you will tell me as soon as possible. Good. The two did not speak, and Shen Yan started drinking tea with a teacup. The dignified and elegant appearance surprised Ji Bu secretly. A person who can have such a habit of drinking tea is not something an ordinary family can raise. He immediately took a high look at Shen Yan. After drinking a cup of tea, after a while, Shen Yan had no plans to leave. Ji Biu couldn't help it anymore and asked, "Miss Shen, would you like to call Mr. Feng and let him pick you up?" "Call up?" "Oh, by the way," Feng Jing gave her a communication tool. Shen Yan took it out of the bag and looked left and right. He couldn't see anything except the material. When Ji Biu on the side saw her turning her phone over and over several times, she couldn't figure out what she wanted to do. He asked, "Is the phone dead?" Shen Yan shook his head, "Jing gave this to me this morning. I haven't used it." Ji Biu almost choked on his saliva. There are people who haven't used a mobile phone before? Seeing that Shen Yan was still watching over and over again, he said with difficulty, "Well, will you show me?" Shen Yan quickly threw the phone to him, as if he couldn't wait to throw a hot potato. "Ji Biu." Shen Yan stared at Ji Biu's hand without blinking, and saw that he didn't know where to press it, and the originally dark phone suddenly turned on. Her eyes lit up, "This thing still shines." "Ji Biu. What kind of antique is this anyway?" Enduring the waves in his heart, he found the number of Feng Jing, the only contact in his contacts, and pressed the call button. The phone rang and was connected, but there was an unfamiliar male voice on the other end of the phone. "Hello madam, the president is in a meeting, and he asked me to tell you that the driver is waiting for you downstairs in Huanyu." The sound of madam made Ji Biu feel mixed. Sure enough, Feng Jing's woman. The other party hung up after speaking, and Shen Yan put the phone away and walked out. Ji Biu followed and wanted to send her off, but she refused. "I will go downstairs myself." "Okay, come back to me if you have something to do." After sending Shen Yan away, Ji Biu wiped the fine sweat from his forehead. "I always thought that there were no women around Feng Jing because he was a workaholic. Now he knows that Feng Jing likes this tune." Ji Biu didn't know, if Feng Jing knew what he was thinking at this time, it wouldn't be enough to cut him 100 times. Let's talk about Shen Yan. When the elevator came down to the 5th floor, she stopped. She glanced at the number on it, and it hadn't reached 1 yet, so she didn't move. At this moment 2 women with heavy makeup came in. As soon as the elevator door was closed, the 2 women chatted in a silent manner. "Have you heard? Just now Director G was furious about a woman and fired the new receptionist directly." "Well, I'm quite curious about what kind of woman that is that makes Director G to highly valued." "Hey, no matter how beautiful she looks? Is Huang Xi not beautiful? Director G still doesn't look down on it. From my point of view, it must be that Hu Mii's tricks." Suddenly, there was a chuckle behind him. When the 2 looked back, they saw Shen Yan looking at them with his lips curled up with a smile. After seeing her clearly, the 2 subconsciously glanced at each other, and they both saw amazing colors in each other's eyes. Huanyu is not without beautiful artists, but none of them have their own characteristics. The woman in front of her is different, not only looks simple and beautiful, but even has a bit of charm. There were originally 2 contradictory things that appeared to her without any sense of contradiction. More importantly, they met such a person in the company for the first time. Lan Xiling quickly reacted and asked, "Are you the one who came to see Director G today?" Shen Yan didn't speak, his eyes fell on the open elevator door. "It's on the 1st floor." Seeing her walking outside, Lan Xiling strode out and stopped in front of her. "Hey, I'm talking to you, are you deaf?" Shen Yan was forced to stop, raised his eyes and glanced at her lightly. "What's wrong with you?" Seeing her attitude so weak, Lan Xiling angered upward. Anyway, she is also one of the few traffic Xiaohuaiden that the company has become popular this year, so she actually treats herself with this attitude? Thinking about it, she lifted her chin and said proudly, "Are you a new artist? You know who I am," and turned a blind eye to me. When Shen Yan heard it, he became interested. "Oh! Who are you? I can't ignore you." She finds it very fresh. No one has dared to speak to himself like this for a long time. The person in front of him didn't look like a stupid person. He would say such rude words. More importantly, they seemed to have no interest, so it shouldn't be. Before Lan Xiling could speak, another woman in the same group spoke first. Xiling, forget it, let's go. Lan Xiling is one of the few small traffic flowers the company has picked up this year, and it's gone because of his own achievements, and it has always shown newcomers in the company. If you want to go, go first. Wen Xiu, don't blame me for not reminding you. If you leave, I won't repost Weibo for you. This. Wen Xiu didn't have the resources of Lan Xiling, so she finally accepted a female #1 play, which was about to be released soon. She told Lan Xiling for several days before the other party agreed to forward her official blog to promote her new play. Now that Lan Xiling said so, she didn't dare to speak again. Shen Yan looked at them with interest, and understood something in his heart. It's just that the relationship between the two people is not as good as it seems, and there must be some interests. Lan Xiling looked at Shen Yan again. Are you a newcomer to the company? Logically speaking, I am your senior. In this way, if you call me senior, I won't care about you. Puff Chuff Shen Yan couldn't help but laughed. Lan Xiling smiled. What are you laughing at? I'm afraid you can't stand it. She has lived for more than 3,000 years, but the other party is only a yellow-haired girl in her early 20s, who can bear her predecessor. However, Lan Xiling didn't think so. What can't stand it? Everyone is from the same company. See you when you look up and lower your head. You shout now, and there will be no barriers when you meet in the future. If I don't shout, what can you do to me? You. Lan Xiling became angry from embarrassment, and raised his hand to greet Shen Yan's face. Before her hand was close to Shen Yan, her wrist was grasped by one hand. When she saw it, it turned out to be Shen Yan's hand. You, let go, or I will call someone. The smile on Shen Yan's face didn't know when to retreat. At this moment, his face was cold, blue-purple spirit, right? I remember you. You'd better pray that I can go to the film right away. Otherwise, she can't go to the filming. She is in a bad mood, and sees the other party without looking up, and it is inevitable that she will not take her out of anger. After all, it was brought to the door by herself, and she used it as a punching bag without any psychological burden. Lan Xiling was speechless at this moment. She tried to withdraw her hand, but couldn't twitch for a moment. The alarm bell in Lan Xiling's heart was overwhelming. The woman in front of her looked weak, and she was so strong. She suddenly regretted to provoke such a person. At this time, a figure hurried in from outside the door. He hurried to Shen Yan's side and said respectfully, "Miss Shen, the president asked me to take you home."